All right, we are live. Welcome to Divine Farmer Health Thursday, 10 a.m. Central Time podcast. I'm Chris McKee, I'm a certified nutritionist, and I'm running solo today. Jimmy and Jessica, his wife, are now in China. They have been doing an Asian tour. They were in Taiwan for a week, and now they're in China. So hopefully you're getting to follow some of their adventures on Facebook. They were on the Great China Wall, I think it was yesterday. Pretty amazing pictures. So I can't wait to hear, and eating a lot of interesting food. They post a lot of pictures of food, Asian food, very different. So we're going to hear a lot, I'm sure, when he gets back. But today's topic I wanted to do, because what we are hearing in the feed, what you guys are posting in a lot of our feeds on social media, is the price of food is getting so expensive and it's getting harder to eat healthy. So I thought I'd dive into how to eat healthy on a budget. That's our topic today. And yes, things are definitely, prices are climbing. I think we're seeing this. And, some of the big ones obviously are fuel and then groceries. And I know we've had to adjust our grocery budget and really pay attention more to what we're buying and the price of some of the things that I used to buy. I'm not buying anymore. I'm just like, that's crazy. I'm not going to buy it. One of those examples would be, because I'm gluten-free, I was buying gluten-free tortillas, and they are now, for 5 gluten-free tortillas is $6. No, not happening. And I'm not going to make homemade tortillas. I don't eat them enough. So things like that, they're off the list. So today I wanted to dive into what we can do, first of all, for cleaning out our house, our kitchen, our refrigerator. How do we get started on a healthy eating plan? Now, if you've joined any of our programs that we run, we really encourage you to do a clean out and get the kitchen ready and the refrigerator and the pantry ready before you dive into any kind of a detox or anything like that. But I want you to really think about this on everyday living, right? What does your pantry look like? I think a lot of times we'll buy food thinking that we're going to eat it, and then it's in the pantry and it just sits there and we don't use it. So I'm going to encourage you to take maybe a half a day. Maybe it won't even take that long. It might take a couple hours, and actually get in your pantry and start looking at what you have in there. And the stuff that is not good, right? It's not healthy. Either you're going to eat it up, which is not a good thing, but if you want, you don't want to waste it, or you're going to give it away to a food pantry. Right now, the food pantries are begging for people to give them food. So you could do that, but you want to get into your pantry and see what is in there that may be packaged or processed, has an ingredient list this long on it, is not going to be healthy for your body, and get it out of the pantry and start to clean that pantry out. So what you want to have left in your pantry are things that you would use as ingredients in a recipe. For instance, tomato sauce, right? Something like that. Or maybe like we'll have a can of chili in there. We like Amy's chili, or chicken broth. I use chicken broth on a lot of my recipes. So you want things in your pantry that you would use for making a recipe, but you don't want those foods in there that are like Kraft mac and cheese, right? Not a good choice. So I would suggest you do, the first thing is clean out your pantry. And oftentimes I'll hear people say, I have so much stuff in there, I don't even know why I bought it. Yeah, because sometimes I'll do the same thing. I'll do an evaluation of my pantry, and it's like, I must have bought this for a recipe and I never made the recipe. So then I'll start to think, what was that recipe, or how can I use it up? You want to look at your expiration dates for sure on your canned goods. Packaged goods usually are longer. There's a lot of packaged goods that aren't too bad. So for instance, one of them is in our grocery store here in Texas, the section that has like the Rice-A-Roni in it, or the pre-boxed rice or whatever, has something called Seeds of Change. And Seeds of Change is an organic pre-cooked grain. And sometimes it's rice, sometimes it's rice and quinoa. So it's a mixture. And that is already pre-cooked. Now they tell you to microwave it in the bag. You don't want to do that. You want to take it out and put it in a pan and heat it up that way. So there are some options out there in the dry goods for healthier eating. But here's what I want you to think about. What is your kryptonite? Okay, so if you ever watch Superman, Superman had kryptonite that totally made him ineffective. We all have our kryptonite, something we cannot stay away from. some people's ice cream in the freezer, some people's cookies in the cabinet, whatever it is, chocolate, maybe dark chocolate, which is good for you. You just can't stop with one little square. Think about what is your kryptonite and get it out of the house. Because if you have ice cream in the freezer and you can't stay away from it, then you want it out of the house. If it's too tempting, then remove it. Okay. So that's a really big thing when you're going through your freezer, your refrigerator, your cupboard, your pantry. Remove those things. Like if it's a bag of chips, like if you can't just eat one, like it used to be the Lay's potato chips, but you can't eat one. Yeah, true. So get it out of the house. If you sit down and eat a half a bag, then you know it's your kryptonite, right? So really important to remove those foods that you know you have no control. Once you start to eat them, it's just you're out of control with it. Or maybe it's something like I had a client last week who basically for dinner most nights she was making a smoothie and eating popcorn. Well, the smoothie part was okay, but the popcorn every single night. We said, maybe we'll do that 2 or 3 times a week, but not every single night. She's really hooked on popcorn, right? Because of the salt and the butter and all those things. So you may have something like that. I find that many of my clients eat the same foods over and over again. It's a very common thing to see breakfast and if they're taking their lunch to work or if they're at home, they're eating the same foods over and over again. So I'm going to talk about variety today because that's really, really important for your diet and for a healthy diet. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to stock our pantry with some really good stuff. So one of the areas that you absolutely want to clean out, and don't even give this to the food pantry, okay, is bad oil, seed oil. So like canola oil and corn oil and safflower oil. We want to get these oils out of our pantry, and we want to put in really good oils like avocado oil and extra virgin olive oil and coconut oil and ghee. You can cook with ghee, have grass-fed butter in the refrigerator, those types of fats. You don't want to be cooking with the bad fats. I think the seed oils probably are top number one on my list for pro-inflammatory foods, very damaging to the body. So you want to get those bad fats out of the pantry and get good, clean fats into the pantry so that when you're cooking, you're reaching for a really good, healthy fat. Okay. And if you can have healthy sweets, like I said, dark chocolate, maybe you're okay with having some sweets in the cupboard that are, moderately okay. Like we make our own trail mix and then throw in a little dried cranberries and dried apricots and stuff like that. That's kind of a sweet fix. We do shop at Costco like once every 3 months, and we do buy dark chocolate covered coconut little things that I put in the freezer, and we pull those out and put them in a baggie and they're in the fridge for a sweet little snack. So there's some things. There's another one we get at Costco called cashew clusters, and it's cashews and pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds. It's all bound together with some honey. So that's another little sweet treat. So you want to have something because we're all going to have a sweet like crave every once in a while, right? So we have to have something to go towards that's not going to be a whole like pint of ice cream. So you got to have something in the cupboard or in the refrigerator or in the freezer that you can grab on those moments when you're like, I just have to have something a little bit of sweet. Okay. So figure out what in your grocery store. I know a lot of you don't live, some of you don't even live in the United States, but we live very rurally. We're on 50 acres. We're an hour from the nearest large grocery store. I have to go, I shop once a week. I'm going to encourage you guys to do that too. So when I go shopping, it's like, I've got to have a plan. So when I don't have it in the house, it's not, I can't run down and grab something. I can't just run down, or even like maybe go to Starbucks or something. It doesn't happen. We're way out of town. So depending on where you live, if you're really tempted to just run out and get something because you're not prepared, then let's talk about that today. Okay. Some of the things that you can have in your pantry that are like, for instance, I don't even go down the cereal aisle, and it's crazy because there's a whole aisle for cereal in the grocery store, and I don't even go down there. I buy we have a bulk natural food section in our grocery store here in Texas, which is great. You can also buy a lot of this stuff online. But I buy organic rolled oats in that natural food section in bulk, and it's way cheaper than the box pre-made stuff. Like the Quaker oats are loaded with pesticides. So I just stay away from that kind of stuff. And I make our own granola so that we don't have, that's the only cereal that we have in our house is a homemade granola. And then we do steel cut oats for hot cereal. You can also do quinoa, especially if you're vegetarian or vegan. Quinoa is really high in protein, and you can make quinoa for breakfast. You can cook brown rice for breakfast. A lot of these things you can cook and make batches of them. So I will cook steel cut oats, and then we'll have enough for 2 or 3 days. If we want to eat on it for a week, it's in the refrigerator because steel cut oats take a while to cook. But those kinds of things are what you want to have in the pantry, not boxed cereals. Breakfast cereals are probably the worst invention for breakfast that they ever made. It's just really, most of it's very processed. Most of it's very high glycemic, raises the blood sugar a lot. And so encourage you to move away from the boxed cereal. So what you want to have in your pantry maybe are the raw materials to make something like steel cut oats, okay? And of course, you can have dried beans in there. You can have quinoa in there. You can have brown rice in there. Some of these things. And yes, you're going to have to cook. This is something when we have people come into our program, we tell them ahead of time, look, you're going to have to cook. And we'll talk about some tips on this, but we've gotten away. So much of us have gotten away from cooking, and especially if you're working full time. I know this is really challenging. You might leave early, you might commute, you might have a family, and you get home and you're tired and you don't want to make it, cook it for an hour cooking, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit. Now, once you cleaned out your pantry and once you cleaned out your refrigerator, and then you're going to go grocery shopping, right? I recommend that you shop once a week and do meal planning. Meal planning saves you so much money, okay? Because you know what you're going to have. So I literally, like, every week is different. And I'm sure it's the same in your house, right? You just don't know. So like we have a women's conference at church on Saturday. So I'm going to be gone all day. So I'm not going to come home and cook dinner for Saturday night. So what I'm doing is I'm making a crock pot of food on Friday night, and we're going to have leftovers on Saturday night. So I look at my schedule ahead of time for the week, and I figure out my busy days. Like, I do nutritional consulting. So some days I may have consults all day, and I am not going to be at 5 o'clock spending an hour in the kitchen. So something really quick I might throw in the grill, or I might put in the air fryer, or I might have started something in the crock pot. So I look at my week and I do my meal planning based on my week. And I literally write next to that meal, this one's Saturday, this one's Tuesday, because I know what day I'm going to be really, really busy and not going to take much time. Or I might have a day where I have time to cook. And so I might put on there, this one I'll do on this day because I can spend a little more time in the kitchen. So meal planning will make your brain relax, for one thing. And it will also make sure that you have the food in the house for the day that you are super busy and you need a 30-minute meal, right? So meal planning really works. And then when you grocery shop, like I said, I don't even go down the cereal aisle. So you'll get to the point where you just know your aisles in the grocery store, where sometimes if it's a condiment or something, obviously it's going to be an aisle. But most of the time, you're shopping the perimeter for healthy food. You're shopping the perimeter of the grocery store. So you have your proteins and your meats and your dairy and your vegetables are all on the perimeter of the store. The other thing, which I'm sure you've heard 100 times, is don't go grocery shopping hungry because you will give in. Biochemistry in the brain is much stronger than your willpower. So you're going to give in when you go to the bakery section in your grocery store and, oh, look at that. Look at those cookies and look at those bread and look at that donut. You're going to give in to buying something. So definitely eat before you go grocery shopping. It's so important to do that. Let's talk about budgets in general, okay? We were married 14 years before we actually got on a budget, and we were really struggling financially, had a lot of credit card debt, and we actually went to our pastor of our church, and he spent time with us and put us on a budget. And I remember thinking at the time, this is going to be so restrictive, And in reality, it actually relaxed our brains because we knew exactly what was coming in and we knew exactly what was going out every month. If you've ever wanted to do that, Dave Ramsey is a great guy. Has a lot of tools for doing budgeting. So we have had to raise our grocery budget. So in raising our grocery budget, we've had to lower some other things like eating out. We're not eating out. We ate out yesterday lunch, and we probably won't eat out again for a week because we don't go to town very often. We were in town grocery shopping yesterday. So it really makes a difference when you budget. So it's so stressful to not know if you're going to have enough money at the end of the month. It's so stressful to not know if what you just spent on groceries was too much, right? And so I really encourage you, if you don't have a budget system in your financials and your household finances, that you do budget. It truly does relax the brain. And I know when I go grocery shopping, I have got to keep it at this point, and if I'm looking at something and I'm saying, nope, that's just too much. Like my $6 tortillas, there's just no way I'm spending $6 on tortillas. So it really helps to get on a budget. So have a grocery budget. Yes, right now we are having to change, right? We've got more fuel costs because we drive to town. Like I said, it's an hour to town. So our fuel costs have gone up. So a lot of things have gone up. And so other things have had to adjust where we have some wiggle room, like eating out is not a necessity, right? So let's talk about buying food that's pre-made food. What I mean by that is frozen food mostly. So there's, obviously a lot of stuff in the frozen food aisles that you can buy. But if you look at the prices, which I do scan through there and look at them, and it's $4 or $5, sometimes $6 for one meal. For usually one, maybe two people. So they're not inexpensive. We do keep a couple frozen meals in the freezer. We buy Amy's frozen meal. They're organic, and they have a variety of different things. They have all clean ingredients, and that's the only one that I've seen in the frozen food section that looks like it's decent. It's not cheap, right? I mean, it's like like I said, it's like $5 or what for this little thing. But in an emergency, when you need something to eat and you don't want to cook, you can go in and grab it, have some things in the freezer. I also pre-cook, like I did a whole batch one weekend. I did spaghetti sauce. I made chili, I made meatballs. I have a whole bunch of stuff in the freezer. And that way, if it's really a crazy week or a crazy night or something, I could just pull that out and it'll be a fast meal. So when you have the time to cook and freeze stuff, it really makes a big difference. And that way you're buying the food on sale oftentimes. So what I will do is I will always look at what they have, for instance, in the meat department, if they have anything on sale. We do shop Costco once every 3 months because we're 3 hours from a Costco. So we go and spend the night at my daughter's and go Costco shopping. And I do buy like my organic chicken there, frozen fruit there. We buy our grass-fed butter there and we put it in the freezer. So we stock up, we buy our coffee there, organic coffee there, and we throw it in the freezer. And so we stock up when we're there. But there's oftentimes sales at your grocery store. So you'll see chickens on sale or some things on sale. And what I do is I buy it. I don't have a meal plan for it or anything. But I buy it and I stick it in the freezer and it's like, okay, there it is. And then when I go to make my meal plan, I go, I got this in the freezer. I bought that chicken. It's in the freezer. I got some chicken breasts in there. So always scout your grocery store for what's on sale that week, because there's often a lot of things on sale and you can grab them and just stick them in the freezer. So I really encourage you to do that. Fresh, obviously, vegetables are always best. Frozen are next best, and canned are the lowest because they've been heated and they lose a lot of nutrient value when they're canned. But I always have some canned things in the cupboard, again, just in case, right? Like canned green beans, canned pickled beets, some things like that are in the cupboard just in case I need an emergency vegetable. So I always have that in the freezer or in the pantry or in the freezer. Now, let's talk about organic. Jimmy and I are very much a pro-organic because we know the toxicity level on people is really, really high. But again, because of budget, sometimes organic is either out of reach or it's just ridiculously priced. So for instance, let's use strawberries as an example. Strawberries are the most heavily sprayed fruit that there is. I think it's got 22 pesticides on it. It's just insane. So if they are getting too expensive, I just will not buy strawberries because there's no way I'm buying non-organic strawberries. And we'll talk about how to clean non-organic here in a minute. But there are some fruits and vegetables that are just too heavily sprayed that if I cannot buy them organic, I just don't buy them. And again, we buy in the winter frozen organic strawberries for like smoothies and things like that. So sometimes the frozen is more reasonable organic than the fresh. There is we post this quite a bit in the Facebook pages here. If you go to the EWG.org website, that's environmentalworkinggroup.org website, E like Ed, W like wind, G like girl.org, you will find something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So the Environmental Working Group every year goes in and tests the majority of the common eaten fruits and vegetables for pesticides. And they create what's called the Dirty Dozen list, the ones that are the most heavily sprayed. Strawberries end up on the top every single year. So go in there and look at that, because you definitely want to either buy those organic or just don't buy them. Okay, the Dirty Dozen, they're just too heavily sprayed. Now, the Clean 15 are the fruits and vegetables that they found very minimal amount of pesticides on. So those you can buy non-organically. So a good example would be avocados. I never buy an organic avocado because it's more expensive and we don't really have to worry about it. Avocados are really thick skin too. But let's talk about cleaning non-organic fruits and vegetables, okay? Because that's a question I get quite a bit. If I don't buy organic, what can I use to wash my fruits and vegetables? The number one thing that comes up as the most effective is baking soda. It removes about 90% of the pesticides, and the ratio is 4-to-1. So I'm sorry, it's 1 teaspoon of baking soda to 2 cups of water. Okay, so let's say you're going to soak and wash something, and you're going to put 4 cups in there. You would use 2 teaspoons of baking soda and 4 cups of water and mix it all up and dissolve it, and then throw in your fruit or your vegetables. Now, another one that's pretty high on pesticides, apples. So, you might not be able to afford to buy organic apples. So you throw them in there and you let them sit for about 5 to 8 minutes or so, and then you rinse them off really good. You'll remove about 90% of the pesticides. Now, vinegar is another one. Vinegar is the one you could do 4-to-1, 4 parts water to 1 part vinegar. Vinegar is removing mostly bacteria and some of the wax on food. And this is really good for if you, like, for instance, when I bring strawberries home and I buy them organically, we only shop once a week, and I buy 2 of the cartons of strawberries. They're not going to last for 2 weeks. For a week. They'll go bad because there's some bacteria on them. So what I'll do is I'll soak them in the vinegar for like 5 minutes, and then rinse them off really good and lay them out on some paper towel and let them dry, and then put them back in the little cartons. And they last a lot longer. They don't go bad because you've taken off some of the bacteria that would cause the mold. So if you want some of your fruits and vegetables to last longer, that vinegar is a great one to use. So vinegar for the bacteria and the wax, baking soda for the pesticides. So baking soda, again, is 1 teaspoon for every 2 cups. Vinegar is 4-to-1, 4 parts water to 1 part vinegar. So that will really help. And yes, it takes more time when I get home from grocery shopping. It takes more time to wash some of this stuff, but then it's done for the week, and it does keep it a lot longer. And that's one thing, shopping once a week is you want to make sure your fruits and vegetables are staying fresher longer, because they will go bad, right? And some of the food, like I will plan my meals, for instance, asparagus doesn't last for a really long time. So I'll plan my meals so that I'm eating the foods that'll go bad quicker earlier in the week, like within the first couple of days that I buy the food, like asparagus, I'll have it the second day or something. So the stuff that can go longer, like sweet potatoes and things like that, could go longer. And so those will be later on down in my list of food or my meals. So planning is really important. So EWG.org is one site, and the other one is something called Thrive Market. Now, Thrive Market is an online grocery store, basically. You do have to pay a membership. It's like $50 a year, I believe. It's kind of like a Costco membership, but you can order for way less than your grocery store. Thrive Market has a lot of, yes, they're packaged things, but they are going to be organic. They're going to be, minimal ingredients. So if you haven't checked it out, I would check out Thrive Market. They get shipped right to you. So that's really nice. That's handy and easy to do. So that's one. And then I mentioned Costco, and of course, Sam's Club is another big box one. They do require memberships, but oftentimes you can get things for really a lot less. Let's talk about the dollar store for a minute. My daughter and I actually 3 years ago in Texas, we had what was called a snowmageddon, where the power, it was in Texas is odd, but we were at a 0 degree temperature for days on end, and there was no power. Everyone lost power for at least 4 days. We did not live here at the time, but my daughter and her family, my granddaughter and her 2 little ones, they were 2 and 4 years old, and my grandson, they all hunkered down in my daughter's house because they had a fireplace. They were 4 days without power, and the water went out for a while. And when it came back on, it had to be boiled. So that kind of made us all wake up and go, we might want to prepare a little bit about having some food on, in the house, because they were getting really low on food by day 4. They were cooking on a camp stove, Coleman camp stove, and the barbecue. So we went out and we did a whole bunch of prepping for like a 30 days of food. And we were doing comparison of prices. We were looking at Costco, we were looking at the dollar store, and we were looking at our local grocery store. And so because they all have apps, you can actually look up food. So we went to the dollar store first, thinking the dollar store would be the cheapest, right? Actually, we found that many times our local grocery store was less than the dollar store. So really pay attention. Just because it's a dollar store doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be less than your grocery store. Costco, again, wasn't always the cheapest either. We were looking at Costco and comparing to dollar store and our grocery store. So you have to kind of learn what your grocery stores, your other stores that you have available, and look at their prices and compare them, because sometimes in your mind you think, well, it's a dollar store, it must be less, and not necessarily. So do some comparison shopping to really help you to know where your best prices are going to be. Okay. All right. So that is on shopping and stocking your pantry. So let's talk about cooking here. We got we only have a few minutes left. So let's talk about cooking. I talked about pre-cooking, pre-making food, like pre-making your steel cut oats, pre-making food and put it in the freezer. Bring your lunch. If you are working, bring your lunch. It's so much healthier for you and so much less expensive. If you are a recipe person, then maybe it's time to get some new recipes. My favorite cookbook right now is Against All Grain by Danielle Walker. It's a gluten-free book, but she has great recipes, Against All Grain. And then there are some apps. And what we can probably do in the feed when we get down here is maybe put some of these down here. But there is an app called the Paprika app, which you can put all your own recipes in. And my daughter and I share recipes back and forth on that app. Allrecipes.com has a million recipes. They're not necessarily healthy, but you can adjust them, and you can go to allrecipes.com, and just if you're bored and you need some ideas, they have great ideas. You can just plug it in and do that. If you're not a recipe person, here's a tip to eating healthy. Fill half your plate with vegetables, preferably green, like broccoli or Brussels sprouts or maybe salad or something. Do a quarter of your plate with a starchy vegetable, maybe like cauliflower or half a sweet potato, and a quarter of your plate with protein. For a woman, that's going to be about the size of my fist, about 4 ounces. For a man, it's probably going to be more like 6 to 8 ounces. So half your plate with the vegetables, a quarter of your plate with starchy vegetables, and then protein. That way, you're eating healthy, and you can literally throw a meal together in minutes if that's what you've got in the refrigerator and you're not a recipe cooker, right? So do that. I mentioned the crock pot. Air fryer is really fast, and the barbecue, we barbecue here in Texas in the summertime. Pressure cookers is another one that's a good one. You can pressure cooker beans really fast, so you can do that. eating out is very expensive. So to keep your budget down, then eat out as minimally as possible. Like we eat out once a week, maybe, and we usually do lunch because we have the ability to do that instead of dinner, which is less expensive. And then remember this. Let me leave you with this. You're not going to be perfect. There's no way. 80-20 rule, 90-10 rule. Make sure that you're eating 80% of the time really clean and healthy. And then 20% of the time, just enjoy. If you feel like going out and having pizza, then have pizza. Just make sure you don't have the things in the house that are going to be really tempting for you that you can't stop eating, like that bag of chips or that pint of ice cream or something. Just got to remove the kryptonite. And you can eat healthy on a budget. You can. It's more challenging now than it has been, but we can do this. So hopefully that has given you some great ideas. And we would love to see any questions once we post this video. If you want to see it, if you watch this recording, or if you want to go watch this later, it's up on YouTube. We usually put it up on YouTube. So somebody said the dollar store only has random foods that are remotely healthy. Can you list 10 items that would even be healthy at the dollar store? I would say probably more canned food. You're going to find like tomato sauce, right? Maybe chicken broth, those kinds of things. But again, we found that they were not any better. They were actually more expensive sometimes than our regular grocery store. So yeah, the dollar store doesn't have a lot of healthy stuff. It's a lot of prepackaged, pre-made food. But I know right now people are on a budget, and so they may be considering going to the dollar store. I just want to make you aware that it may not necessarily be less expensive than your grocery store. So always do price comparisons. I'm not a coupon person. I don't do coupons. Because what I find is most coupons are packaged processed food. But if you're a coupon person, you might be able to save some money there too if you can find some healthy foods in using couponing as well. I know a lot of ladies have done that for many, many years, but I guess that was the only question we had. All right, you guys, it's been great. I hope that gave you some ideas and tips. We can eat healthy on a budget. My family does it, and will be very open with you. My husband's retired. My husband has Social Security and a pension. I am on Social Security, and then I have my business income, which helps with our budget. We are not like rolling in the dough here. So we're along with a lot of you on almost a fixed income. And so we have to watch our budgets. And so hopefully this is helpful for you today. All right. We'll see you next week. And we have a guest next week. So stay tuned. Bye for now.